At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Hey folks, Dr. Doug here. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you that read the news just recently, I live here in Utah, northern Utah, and we had hurricane force winds the past couple of days, which has toppled trees, turned over big trucks, and in many cases, people are still without electricity, and that's been ongoing for 1 to 2 days now. You can imagine the anxiety that that's causing. Well, anxiety is a real tough situation, but the challenge is that as we experience anxiety, sometimes, you know what, it's just really anxiety and we deal with it, we get things working, and then that's kind of how it works. Well, it's another issue when all of a sudden you lose control of everything. And today I think it would be great to talk about anxiety. I'm really pleased to have the folks at Cascade Academy here, because they specialize in anxiety disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. And quite frankly, they're here to help people who kind of lose control. How are you guys doing today?
Good, great. Thanks for having us, Dr. Doug.
Hey, thanks for joining us here. Hey, listen, quick question for you. Well, let's let you, Brad, why don't you go ahead and introduce the staff, yourself and the others.
Sure. To my left is Leah K. Roberts. She is the Director of Admissions. Joined us in March, just before our opening date of April, and comes with a wealth of experience and knowledge around helping parents find appropriate placement. She worked for Wasatch Academy, a boarding school that's had a long history, and does a great job here with the parents and the kids. Becca Schuler is our Clinical Director. And she joined us at the start of this, first part of January, and has taken us all the way through licensure, done a really good job with all our policies and procedures, and now hiring and training the mentor staff. She has a significant amount of experience with residential treatment programming. Initially started as a therapist years ago, and then assistant clinical director, then CEO of a large facility here in Utah, but comes to us with a wealth of experience and knowledge. Caleb Cottle, my partner, as well as Director of Business Development. He oversees all the marketing, business development, but also has a wealth of knowledge and has participated in a number of startups and other facilities over the last 15 years. My name's Brad Gerard. I'm the Executive Director. Most of my experience is about 14 years in the psychiatric hospital world before 2000. And then after that, I jumped into the residential treatment world, specifically for adolescents and young adults. And like Caleb, started a number of new programs with great teams. And we're excited to tell you a little bit more about what we do and also discuss these days and the challenges with anxiety.
Oh, perfect. Hey, thanks. And thanks for introducing everyone. So Becca, let's clarify what anxiety disorder is and what obsessive compulsive disorder is, because those are the two main things that you work on, right?
That's right. And that's such a great question, because everybody has anxiety, right? Anxiety is a normal part of life. And it's actually a really functional part of life that we have some level of stress that helps us prepare for challenges that we have. When it becomes a disorder, and this is for any disorder, but it becomes a disorder when it's starting to get in the way of our life and it's the things that we want to be doing, or it's excessive in response to the things that are happening around us. So anxiety disorder really is, and there's lots of different types of anxiety disorder, but it's really rooted in this fear of being able to manage the challenges that are coming up next in life, and then that fear becomes debilitating. Obsessive compulsive disorder, which is kind of a cousin of anxiety disorder, is a way of managing that fear. Sometimes those fears are irrational, they don't make a lot of sense, and the individual has a thought that's really intrusive. And to try to get rid of that thought, they do something, whether it's a mental or a physical ritual, that reduces some of that anxiety for a moment and temporarily, but that thought continues to sort of attack their brain. And that's really the heart of both of those disorders. And they all have a bunch of subtypes and a lot of different ways that they manifest, but really the stress that's caused by these are getting in the way of the person's ability to function and achieve their goals and live life the way they want to.
Well, and you know what's interesting? I'm noticing that there's a huge amount of our young people, and that's, even up into the mid-20s, that are experiencing this anxiety disorder to the degree that it's literally affecting their lives. Why are we seeing so much of this?
That's $1 million question, right? But I think we have a lot of answers to that. For one piece, kids nowadays are faced with something called fear of messing up. We used to talk about fear of missing out, FOMO. Now we talk about fear of messing up. And kids are paralyzed by the idea that they're not going to do something well or right or correctly. Another piece that contributes a lot to this is social media and online platforms, access to news, access to the perceived reality of what's going on around them. Kids can hop online and see what their friends are doing and or perceiving or putting out there to say that they're doing. It might not be reality, but what they're comparing themselves against is really a distorted sense of reality a lot of times. So you combine all of these things, the challenge and the pressures to perform well, this fear that they're going to mess it up and not be okay with failure. You combine that with this seemingly perfect view of other people online, and it creates this perfect storm of anxiety disorders.
Well, and I guess the question is, are we as parents of this younger generation kind of responsible in some way for creating an environment where they're starting to feel this more? Or do you find that there's as much anxiety disorder in the older generation as there is in the younger?
That's a great question. I do think that anxiety disorders are rising. We know that anxiety disorders are genetic as well. So anxiety is up to 70% heritable. So what that means, the age-old question of nature versus nurture, the answer is it's both, right? Mm-hmm. So anxious parents do tend to parent their kids differently than other parents who aren't anxious. They'll say more messages like be careful or watch out, or tend to limit the environments and limit the exposure and challenges for their kids because they want to keep them safe. And so it's really driven from well-intentioned parenting, and it's driven from love. But ultimately what can happen is that kid doesn't have as many challenging experiences. They don't have as many failures that they're going to learn from. And ultimately what happens is their confidence level of being able to manage what's happening next really diminishes and is reduced.
And do you find that strictness in parents as the way they're raising their children can have really a deleterious effect on their ability to experience anxiety or to not experience anxiety?
I don't really see a correlation with strictness. I do see a correlation with parents encouraging kids to be confident in their capabilities. So it's really common for us to hear from people, for example, do I protect my kid and keep them safe, right? Because they want to be a safe place for their kids to come and talk about their insecurities and things that they're worried about. So do I comfort them, or do I push them into those challenges? And they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? So some parents, I had a parent talk to us about their first grader saying, man, she's really having a hard time going to school. What do? I don't want to be mean, right? I want to listen to her. I really want to hear her feelings, and she has to go to school. So the tricky balance that we ask parents today to do is to listen to their kids and validate their feelings and push them with confidence into challenges.
Okay, so as a parent, I can tell you that I tried to be fairly free with my children, give them a lot of space and room and so forth. But every once in a while, they would smile and remind me that there was a bit of perfectionism that came from me. And and I guess that's one of the questions I have. Does this sense of perfectionism relate to the anxiety disorder?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times people are putting that on themselves, right? There's this perceived notion of, I have to do everything perfectly. I have to do it just right. I can't mess up. And when that becomes part of somebody's identity or their self-worth or their self-value and how they appraise themselves, well, then they do great things to avoid failure. But we really know that failure is a teacher for us. So they miss out on some of those opportunities that inevitably are going to happen in their life. And when they do, can be really challenging for somebody with a perfectionist worldview.
Okay, so I have a friend that I just smile and we kind of joke a little bit about it because she's a little bit OCD. I will say, as I've watched her a couple of times, it's like, holy cow. And as we started talking, she said, yeah, when I was young, I really had a problem with that, but have been able to overcome that. Are there different levels in both of these disorders?
Yeah, absolutely. For every disorder, there's a different level of severity. And I talk a lot to families and to students and to parents and say, at some point, we all could be diagnosed with a disorder, right? We all have propensities to one disorder or not, right? Some people have more propensities to mood disorders and depression. Some people have more propensities to anxiety disorders. And it becomes a disorder, or it tips the scale when it's affected your life in a way that's stopping you from achieving your goals. But certainly we all have traits of some disorder, and we're somewhere on the severity spectrum, and that can change over time.
Okay, so let's talk to the parents for a minute of these young people, or even to the friends of those that are maybe experiencing this. How do I identify someone that's either experiencing, and go ahead and explain both, the anxiety disorder or the OCD?
Mm-hmm. You would really know that somebody's struggling with an anxiety disorder if their world is getting continually smaller because of fear of not being able to manage typical daily tasks or their typical goals. So what we see in a lot of our kids is things like school refusal. So maybe the student loved going to school, they were social, they were having a great time, and now they're in their room on their phone and refusing to go to class. So, first glance, that could look like oppositionality or depression. And it might be, but it's a warning sign to say this also could be an anxiety disorder where they're paralyzed from fear of functioning in their life. So really, when their world gets smaller and they reduce into a very small comfort zone, as we call it, and they stop challenging themselves to be in the growth zone, that's when there's a clue that maybe we need to dig a little deeper and learn about what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're talking a little bit in generalities here. I want some specifics. I mean, what are some of the things that you would see in their behavior that literally would say, okay, here's a red flag. I need to investigate this a little further.
Yeah, I think you would see things like school refusal for kids. You would see people getting very physiologically aroused. So maybe you're on a drive and they start breathing fast, or they kind of have an element of panic. For kids and adolescents specifically, anxiety oftentimes looks like irritability, right? So they're yelling more frequently at their siblings or their parents. They're withdrawing to their rooms. They're not coming out and socializing with the family. Maybe they're unable to make a phone call to a teacher or to a restaurant, right? Or to a friend. Maybe they just want to type it out because they're too scared to have a live interaction. It can look a lot of different ways for families.
And what about OCD?
Obsessive compulsive disorder, that can look a lot of different ways too. And the tricky thing with it is oftentimes it's really internal. We talk about anxiety as being, and OCD as being an internal disorder. It's happening inside. And so it is hard for people on the outside to see what's going on. So it's important for OCD that we're looking for things like thought patterns or irrational fears. So a lot of times this could look like somebody who, needs to, in the most classic example, fear of contamination, right? Maybe they won't go into a public restroom because the fear behind it is I'll leave with a terrible disease. So I either do a lot of rituals to decontaminate that restroom or I just won't use it. So that's a contamination OCD, but there's a lot of different types. There's fears that I'm going to do something very amoral. There's fears that if I don't perform a ritual a certain way, I'm going to hurt somebody else. And so really you have to be connected to that person and be really open and listen really well to understand if there's some irrational fears happening that they're combating with some sort of a ritual.
Okay, and Brad, you had a comment. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Just some of the extreme, when it gets to the extreme depression, suicidality, self-harming in particular is one of those extreme behaviors that parents need to be aware of. The isolation, of course, is the first sign, but self-harming and quite often in areas of the body that are covered by the clothing, so that parents don't know and other people don't know.
Yeah,
but it's truly an outlet for them.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, I mean, as I was saying with my friend, never had to seek professional help. And I think, as you say, we all have, to some degree, some of this going on in our lives. At what point in time do we know that it's time to seek professional help?
When the child's not able to achieve their goals or function in their world effectively, and or when we see a regression of their ability. So if this was a student who, for example, was competitive gymnastics and one day says, no, I'm not doing this anymore, and really doesn't have a good way to verbalize why, that's a big warning sign that something significantly has shifted. A lot of times kids and teenagers are getting diagnosed in adolescence and young adulthood for the first time, but looking backwards, parents can say, oh, I see it now. That was part of anxiety. That was part of anxiety. And oftentimes it looks like them withdrawing from the things that they're typically happy to do.
Okay. And I guess the next question, this has always been on my mind. As you know, I had a dental practice for a number of years, and one of the areas that I specialized in was treating head and neck pain, and the dentists now call it TMJ. People would come in and say, oh, I have TMJ, and I'd go, no, you have two of them, one on one side and one on the other side. But the reality is, let's find the root cause of what's going on here. And so we would really look at the neuromuscular patterns to see whether or not that was what was going on. Have you found that in general, oftentimes people will go seek help in some way, and really all they're doing is trying to take care of the symptoms rather than delve into and find the cause?
Absolutely. It happens all the time. And one of the reasons for that is anxiety is so closely related to how our body is feeling and functioning. Mental health and physical wellness, they're not separate. They exist together. And so we know that if somebody's anxious on a drive on the road, for example, well, their stomach gets upset, right? Or if they are constantly worried and have this hypervigilance about them, well, their neck muscles are tight. And all of those things are very real experiences of anxiety that may have some root cause behind it that they might not even be aware of.
Well, and what's interesting, and I don't mean to get a little, critical here, but I see a lot of times where, oh, you know what, my child has anxiety disorder, so we've got her on some medication. And that just really bothers me. You guys do things a little bit differently, don't you?
We do. Yeah, we really like to take a holistic approach to wellness overall as the whole person. And there's a lot of different areas to look at and to make sure are balanced before you can really say, I've developed a healthy life practice in all different areas of my life.
Okay. And Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about what makes Cascade Academy so unique? And certainly, Caleb, if you want to kick in on this, that would be great.
I think the key is, and our goal initially was, of course, girls with anxiety. And when Caleb first approached me about his idea over a year ago now, since Labor Day of last year, I started doing the research. I started looking and realizing that girls specifically suffer twice the amount of anxiety disorders as boys. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. One, they're far more engaged in what some of their challenges are, and they're far more social in a lot of ways. But when he approached me about this particular population, At first I thought, well, there's got to be a lot of programs providing this type of care, but really it's one of a list of perhaps 8 to 12 different diagnoses that most facilities specialize in. Whereas his approach and now our approach is, no, let's take this this disorder, this challenge that the girls have in particular, and really delve into it in a very specialized way, in a very thought out way. And one is the home environment. And a lot of programs will say, well, we're home-like. This is really a home. So we're very fortunate that Carol and John Probst, the owners of this home, who've raised their children here and since decided to work with Caleb and turn it into a 26-bed program for girls struggling specifically with anxiety and OCD. So we're very fortunate.
Okay, and here's a picture of the home, and that is amazing. Now, you guys, you can tell us where you're located and so forth, but that is a home. That environment is amazing.
So we're really proud of what we're able to offer here, not just our facilities, but the clinical work that we're doing. Our facilities are beautiful. We're located in Midway, Utah. We sit on 3.5 acres, and our home here is a 13,000 square foot home with 9 bedrooms that allows us to provide care for up to 26 girls. They share a bedroom with other girls. And what I love, you mentioned earlier, Dr. Doug, is the difference between treating symptoms and treating root causes. It's interesting as you look at kids with anxiety, a lot of times, you know, there's drug abuse, there's self-harming, there's eating disorders that are taking place amongst our youth. And we can address each one of those individual things. And as we dig down into it, oftentimes, take someone, for example, an adolescent girl who's abusing her anxiety medication. Well, she's now got labeled as someone with a drug problem, but what's really driving that is the anxiety behind that. So as we're able to kind of assess that and work on those root causes and focusing on how anxiety isn't an individual issue. We're not a place where you can come and say, hey, fix my daughter and then bring her back when she's fixed. That doesn't work. It really is a family experience where, sometimes parents are helping accommodate that with a good heart and good intention. They don't realize that they're playing a role in that. So we work with families. We work with adolescent girls and their families, and we help them build the confidence in what we refer to as self-efficacy, which is basically a belief in success because you've had success in the past. And as we build self-efficacy for these young ladies and their families, then the anxiety goes away, and a lot of the comorbidities that are the symptoms and the result of that anxiety go away as well. So it is a unique approach. It's a specialization where we can do one thing and do it really, really well, and that is help girls and their families with anxiety and OCD.
That's great. And Brad, as you and I discussed a little bit earlier when we weren't on the show, you talked about your previous experience in other places that allegedly treat anxiety, but they only have 3 to 4 days and they figure that's going to do it. So what makes your model so different?
Well, I think one of the most powerful aspects that we provide is we have 24/7 care. And also the length of time we have to work with the kids. Certainly there's a lot of anxiety and depression and OCD that can be treated on an outpatient basis, but we're talking about girls that, as Becca said, have lost the ability for normal life functioning. So coming to a place like Cascade Academy, where they can attend school, where they can receive group therapies, individual therapy, certainly medication, as you mentioned before, is a part of that, but really it's about diet, nutrition, exercise, and developing a healthy life practice. We oftentimes say, whatever you're going to do after Cascade, you need to practice while you're here. Mm-hmm. So a big part of that is learning how to practice life. We've got a number of students that started with us in April that are just now going out into the world here locally and working in the community. One in particular is working as a lifeguard. Another is doing some internships and getting experience and challenging themselves. They initially come to us with a very, very small locus of comfort. And certainly coming to a program is anxiety producing itself, anywhere you go. But our goal is to get them comfortable, to assess them, to find out what are the underlying causes. That's where Becca and our great therapy team comes in. And we all work together and expand that comfort zone and get them comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's really what we're about. And as Caleb said, working with families and finding out where some of those challenges are for them. Occasionally it could be a parent who's very enmeshed with school and exactly what their child is doing. And sometimes it's just letting go of that and listening to a good therapist who can help walk them through a new way to process their relationship with their child. That takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. And it's like anything, it's developing a healthy life practice around diet, exercise, and life in general.
Well, and you know, this word holistic, I think, has been overused, but the reality is that it seems to me, at least as you're sharing this, that your approach is extremely holistic in nature, from the standpoint of you're looking at the diet, you're looking at the exercise, you're looking at the family environment, you're working with the parents and maybe even the rest of the family who may be to some degree unknowingly part of the cause of that anxiety. I'm really curious. Let's talk about each of those a little bit, but let's talk about diet. What have you found diet? How does that interact with the anxiety?
Well, one of the things that we found when we work with one of our doctors here is that there's a lot of genetic predisposition to diet and inflammatory disorders and different enzymes that our cells do or don't have that allow us to absorb proper nutrition. So all of our students who come here, we do a genetic assessment called the Pro7 panel, and that's looking at all of their genes on chromosome 1, and it's looking at a whole health panel. It's looking at, for example, the way somebody can absorb certain vitamins. It's looking at inflammatory propensities to have certain food allergies or whatever it might be for them. And we get to work with our doctor who interprets those results for our student and their family and can make diet and exercise and lifestyle recommendations around that. So we do find things, for example, if we have a student who has a transcription error on her genes, which makes her unlikely or unable to absorb vitamin B properly, well, we find out that she has really low energy, or maybe she comes home from school and she's falling asleep every day and she's not able to participate in the activities that she's wanted to. And maybe in her life has become socially isolated because of that. If we can get that fixed and get her proper nutrition and proper supplementation that's specific to her body, and we see her energy increase and now she's able to function the way she wants to, that's going to reduce anxiety, just helping her be able to feel good and to show up to the life activities.
Well, and you know what's interesting is I've really studied this a bit. I find that there is definitely effect on our nutrition and the gut and the way the gut absorbs different foods, but also what's there affects the overall brain neurons. And it's amazing to me that, you know, it takes 9 to 12 months for those neurons to reestablish themselves in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's right. So we talk about neuroplasticity and how quickly can our brain change, or neurogenesis, can we make new neurons? And the answer is absolutely yes. One of the most effective ways and the most clear way that we see from research about how to make new neurons in addition to rerouting old ones is exercise. And so that's a critical component of our program as well, that we're having our kids do yoga, we're getting out on hikes, they're doing workouts in the gym. We're just living an active lifestyle, and how much that's medicine for the brain is undisputable.
Okay, and let's talk about family. You mentioned those a little bit, but let's talk about the family input and what can happen. I think what's really interesting to me is so often we all have our own individual understanding of what's going on. We have our own perception. And I think sometimes someone in the family will say something that they think is very positive and uplifting. And yet the perception of that child is that they're being put down or that someone's striving for perfectionism in them. So talk a little bit more about how you work with the families.
Yeah, you are exactly right. A lot of times there's well-intentioned messages that are being perceived as some sort of an attack or a criticism, and it surprised families. So one thing we really have to do is have our families on board from the very beginning. They are the experts on their children, and our goal is to get all of the information that they know, paint a clear picture for them, and then help give all the members of the family tools to be able to move forward in life knowing what they know now. And so the way we do that is through a lot of parent education. We run groups oftentimes with their families where we're educating them about anxiety, the cycle of anxiety. We also have them always every week in family therapy with their daughter and the therapist, where therapists can help kind of flesh out some of those messages as you were talking about and say, hey, when you say this, here's what she hears. And just that insight alone for a lot of our families is just mind blowing. And they went, wow, I would have never known that when I say such and such, you're experiencing that as rejection. So then we can work with the daughter to rehear the intent behind what parents are saying. And we can work with parents to have an awareness of how to check out how their child is doing and how they can message things differently.
Well, and we talk about the exercise, the diet, the family interaction and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about the actual modalities of treatment that you use, because I think there's 5 main ones that you use over there?
That's right. And really, we picked these modalities because they are the most evidence-based for treating anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorders. The first one we use is cognitive behavior therapy. And it's probably the one people are most familiar with. And it's a pretty big umbrella term as far as a modality. And cognitive behavior therapy really means we're going to look at the way you're thinking. We're going to think about your thinking, which we call metacognition. And we're going to find out if the way these thoughts are popping into your head, where are they coming from? What's the core belief that's driving them? Are they true? Are they helpful? And how can we rephrase them or practice new ways of having different thoughts and integrating that back into your thought process?
Okay, so that's cognitive behavioral therapy. So let's talk briefly about the other 4.
Yeah, we also use something called motivational interviewing, and that's a really important piece of our program. What motivational interviewing does is it says, I want to address the ambiguity of change and the ambivalence of change. And change for any of us is hard, right? We might know that we want to have a certain goal that we're not achieving, and it's because there's some payoff for not achieving that goal, right? It's hard, for example, to get up at 5 a.m. and go running. So with our kids, we have to get them to a point where they have an internal desire to change, that they want to show up and do the hard work. And so we use motivational interviewing to talk about the challenges for the desire of change and to get to the point where they say, yeah, I have an awareness of what's going on and I'm ready to do some of the hard work. We also use acceptance commitment therapy. And part of acceptance commitment therapy is saying, I can lead a fulfilling life even with a disorder, and that doesn't have to become debilitating or a reason that I'm not showing up and functioning, but I can move through it and take the pieces that are helpful and leave the pieces that are not and still be successful. That pairs really well with exposure response prevention. So that's another modality we use called ERP, exposure response prevention. And that's specifically for anxiety and OCD. And what this does is about 25% of the work is looking at our thoughts and the causes and where did this come from and why are we thinking this way? And the next 75% is we're going to go do the thing that you're scared of doing. We're going to teach you how to make sure that it's safe, right? That your fear is in excess to the situation. And we're going to create an exposure hierarchy or an exposure ladder where we're going to build up to the thing that you're most afraid of and have an experience that teaches your brain on an experiential level, not just because we're talking about it, but you're actually going to experience success doing the thing that you were very terrified of. We also use some modality from dialectical behavior therapy, that's DBT. We're not a DBT program specifically, but there's a lot of really helpful modalities within it that are really relevant for our kids. For example, there's really excellent teaching skills about interpersonal effectiveness. And a lot of anxiety comes from not knowing how to navigate relationships successfully. So when we can use DBT and teach people, how do you ask for what you want? Or how do you argue in a fair way? Or how do you get your needs met effectively? We can use those DBT skills to teach that to our kids explicitly and help them practice that in their relationships.
Well, I'm kind of smiling because throughout this whole discussion, I haven't heard anything about medication. Care to comment on that?
We do have providers for medication. It is part of our assessment. And a lot of times people need to have some sort of a help to have serotonin and dopamine balancing correctly to be able to do this type of work. So we work with a fabulous provider who's assessing the whole picture. And we talk with our families that the goal is to be functional and the goal is to be healthy. And we're going to look at all of the ways to get there, not just one, not just two. And if medication is part of that picture, then we're also going to support that because the goal is to be able to achieve and live in the world the way you want to.
Okay. And, I see a lot of kids that are on medication and you know it because they basically have lost their lives. So here's my question. Do you find that with your processes that you go through, particularly working with the other doctor that you're talking about, where you look at this holistic approach with the nutrition, with the exercise, with the different vitamins that you can identify based on that test that you do you find that ultimately you're able to either lower the amount or actually help them to get off of it?
Yes and no. I think really the key is finding the right balance for them. And so for some kids, and for actually what research tells us is that a combination of medication plus therapy for the short term is the most beneficial. Long term, there's a lot of trials out there that say therapy is actually more substantial long term than medication alone. And so to just have medication alone is not sufficient treatment and is long term not going to be a successful strategy for these individuals. They really need to learn the other therapy component, the life practice component of how to manage all of these other parts of their life. And that's what's going to help them manage anxiety symptoms.
Okay, and here I am a parent, and quite frankly, I am really anxious about calling you guys. Number one, admitting that somehow my child is experiencing anxiety. Number two, maybe feeling guilty that I could be part of the cause of that. Leah Kay, we've not heard from you yet, but you're the first point of communication, aren't you?
I am. Yep, I am. I talk to a lot of parents, and you're exactly right. The fear, the blaming of themselves, thinking, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? But a lot of that is you just don't know, like we've talked about. There's just all these factors playing into it. So I am the first point of contact, and I encourage parents and all the listeners out there to call, because early intervention is the key. Really, we can do the most good if we intervene early. And we're working with girls from 13 to 18, so they're at a critical age. Just like in the medical field, we all know when we have a problem, if the earlier we seek treatment, the better off we are. So walking them through that process and seeing if our type of treatment is needed, or is it outpatient, or is it intensive outpatient? And if it's not us, I can help you connect with professionals in the field that can help you.
And that's wonderful to know that if I'm calling you and you go, you know what, there's some other people that can help you here because you don't need to come into this situation. Oh, I think that makes a big difference. So as we close the show, Brad, let's start with you. What would be the message that you would like to share with the audience? And then let's go through each one of you and what your individual message would be.
We've done a lot of research in some of the corporations I worked for. One of the most interesting was a panel of well over 24 parents. And the common thread was they wanted, obviously, help, but more importantly, they wanted hope. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I think I know we provide is both help and hope to get through these challenges and stabilize these girls. and really help them internalize. That's what it's all about. Again, we've talked about life practice around diet, exercise, all these things. But really it's about them eventually internalizing that when I do this, I feel better. For me, I do a lot of running and biking and swimming. I love it. I've done it for years, but there's not a day that I wake up and go, gee, I can hardly wait to get out there when it's like this morning, 36 degrees. But you do it because you understand and you've experienced the joy and the happiness after the event's over. That's just one example of me and my exercise routine, but that applies to so many things with these girls. And one thing we didn't mention was academics. Certainly that's a very important aspect in a child's life. It's their job, really. And what we find sometimes is that these girls are either, perfectionistic. If I don't have a 4.0 or better, I'm failing miserably. Or they've just totally given up any hope of being able to go to and or participate in school. So it's important that is mentioned as an aspect of any good program, of any good intervention for girls struggling with anxiety, that there's a way to educate and get them back online. A lot of times it's about credit recovery, but that's really the challenge with these girls as well, and with any adolescent, is to get them back on track academically, because that's really their job, is to get educated.
Oh, good. I'm glad you brought that up. Caleb.
Yeah, I think that we are inundated in our world, in our society, with the social media, with connection to other people. The world's become a lot smaller, and comparison really has become the enemy to excellence. Well, no matter how great I am, there's always someone that's better than me, and there's messages in the media saying, just do it and be great and be awesome. And that puts a lot of pressure on families. It puts a lot of pressure on adolescents. It puts a lot of pressure on everyone. And one of the messages that I think is important is to share that you don't have to do it alone. In fact, you probably can't do it alone. And there's not one right way to do it. I often joke, I said there's a right way to treat anxiety and there's a left way to treat anxiety. And everybody is going to have their own individualized anxiety profile, which means every individual and every family is going to need their own individualized care. And so we like to be able to be a part of that conversation. If we can help and provide some hope and some healing for these families, we would love to do that. If we can't, we would love to help you find the right place where someone can address those needs that are specific to you. But we do appreciate the individualization of everyone and their individual needs as well.
Oh, thank you. Well said. And Becca.
I think my message to families really is to act and to respond earlier than later. It's much more beneficial to come to a therapist. And I'm thinking of some families I've worked with who, after 2 or 3 times of meeting, I said, your kid doesn't have a disorder. They're just a kid, right? And the relief that comes over families to go, okay, that's great. And I think that's a much better approach than chasing it after the fact. Get early intervention, get good intervention first. Find professionals who are qualified, who know how to answer your questions specifically to anxiety or OCD, if that's what you're concerned about for your child. Whatever the diagnosis, you can interview your therapist. If it's not a good fit, guess what? You can find another one. You're not stuck with them. And it's really about finding the goodness of fit, but do it and do it early and get the support from people around you and get the support from professionals.
Well, and I like what you said there, because I think so many times we feel like if we found one person, we just got to stay with them. We got to realize that we've got to look at the outcome, and if it's not working, we need to move on to find someone else. Leah Kay, you get the last word.
That's right. So just tying it all together, that you are not alone. And hopefully we have inspired you today to take action. We all have our inner social circles, and I think sometimes we worry about the stigma that we may feel, whether it's ourselves that are suffering or our child. And there are millions that suffer. And we do have professionals that have spent years preparing to help you. So take action and overcome that fear and get help.
Okay, and for a parent that's listening to this and wants to get help, How do they find you guys?
Yeah, so if they go to cascadeacademy.com, that's our website. You can find our contact information there, email. My phone number is 801-895-0323.
Okay, repeat that one more time, more slow.
801-895-0323.
Fantastic. Guys, this has just been really amazing to know that you're out there and really have decided that you're going to make a difference in these young women's lives. I can't tell you how much I really honor what you guys are doing.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Thank
so
you very
much.
much,
Thanks
Dr.
for
Doug.
having us. Yeah.
You bet. And folks, thanks for listening today. I hope that you've heard something today that if you're seeing this going on with one of your children or even individually yourself, that you'll reach out to Cascade Academy, that you'll reach out to Leah Kay and at least have that discussion about whether they can help you find someone that can help you based on your needs, or whether they can actually help you by bringing your young child in to work with them. So thanks for listening. Hope it's made a difference for you today, and we look forward to having you join us again soon.